Welcome to the F3 podcast, where we discuss all things that pertain to faith, family, and finances. And remember, like it says at the bottom, no subject is off limits. We are your host today. I am the lowly Dr. Lionel M. Blair Sr. Senior, because I got a junior. And sitting next to me is how I got a junior. Bless the Lord.
Lord have mercy.
It's the glorious, the wonderful, the spectacular, the most eminent herself, Saint Jasmine the First, Dr. Jasmine Blair, my wife. We got a good one for you today, as always.
Welcome everybody to the F3 podcast. If this is your first time with us, definitely buckle your seatbelt. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. Take us on the go. You can find the F3 podcast wherever your favorite podcasts are streamed and listened to. You'll find some links to our books, events, and other products and services in the description box in the show notes. And you can click the link there to find out how to be an avid supporter of the F3 podcast. And if you've got a topic you want us to go over, a question you want us to answer, something you want us to bring to the show, click that same link and drop us a voicemail. And who knows, your topic may very well be the topic of our next episode. So we're going to get right into today's topic. On our last episode, we talked about being a first share leader. So we're going to kind of continue with this leadership thing because, there's so many new leaders out here.
Yeah.
And we're in such a space and time where you do have a lot of the old regime, so to speak, retiring, stepping down.
Yeah.
And there are new leaders coming on the scene every day. And while we thank God for what he's doing, we want to make sure we don't create a vacuum where the church is lost or stagnant because it's too many new people. You ever been to a restaurant to eat and you look around like, is all the staff new?
Right.
This ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right.
Yeah.
Bring me where's somebody. I need somebody old to cook my food. I want to make sure it's done right.
Right.
That's kind of where we are in the church. Like, everybody's new. Okay.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So, but we want to talk about this before you become a senior leader and give some insights to some things that can help you. Whether you're in line waiting to become a senior leader, whether you're praying about the time to step out and start your own ministry or what have you. I believe this will be some good information on this episode to help you. So I'm going to kick this over to you to get us started. Somebody who's becoming a senior leader, they're waiting in line to take over a ministry, or they're getting ready to depart from where they are, or maybe stay within their covering but to step out and start a new work. What would you say to them?
I would say this. First of all, make sure your own personal affairs are in order. Okay? You got to make sure excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all. Coffee went down the wrong way earlier. So let me start that over again. Excuse me. Before you become a senior leader, make sure your personal affairs are in order. I'm going to say that again. Make sure your personal affairs are in order, especially in areas of your life and your money. Okay. Because when you have a lot of baggage coming into ministry, your ministry or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing is going to suffer as a result of that. Okay. As I look in the Bible, okay, I see the type of men that God chose to lead. Okay. He chose productive people. People that was already doing something. But you can't help but ignore the kind of wealth they had either. He chose wealthy people. Why? Because wealth is proof of some kind of competency. God don't choose incompetent people.
That's good.
Let me say that again. God don't choose incompetent people. I haven't met, I don't see one person that he chose to lead his flock that was poor. First of all, even when he created Adam, he created an environment for him to thrive and then plant him in the garden. And after he was successful for a while working the garden, then God said it's not good for this man to be alone. Okay, I'm gonna give him a helpmeet, and they both gonna have dominion and all that other stuff. Okay. God didn't tell him to have dominion till he had a wife. Okay. And God didn't give him a wife until he was proven to be responsibly single. So for all y'all who, and it's a sidebar, for all y'all who want to get married, if you can't be successfully single, God ain't telling you to get married. Anyway, so when it comes to, but see, Adam was already wealthy from his perspective, from his environment. You see what I'm saying? Because God already created an environment for him to thrive and to be wealthy. Look at Abraham. He was already rich coming from his father's house. And he increased in riches as he went on. God chooses people who are productive and that can produce things. Look at the 12. Why am I saying all this? Because we're starting ministry broke. Okay. We are starting ministry broke. And then guess what? We got to depend on the people, hustle folk, and all that other stuff. That's not God.
Asking folks, inboxing folks on social media, asking them, can you come speak at the church?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest turnoffs for me. I don't invite myself to nobody church.
It's tacky.
Right. So it's and it's a hard conversation we got to have. God has not called you to be broke doing ministry. A lot of y'all stressing yourself out and all this other stuff and putting unnecessary pressures on you, your family, and all this other stuff because you want to be a wonder and you think that God is telling you to do this thing and you have a false burden that you've inherited, okay, or put on yourself because there's such thing as a false burden. Just feel the need you just feel the pressure and it feels like it's coming from God. And it's not coming from God. It is the unnecessary pressure for you to try to keep up with the Joneses, okay, in ministry, and for you to you say, oh, I just want to obey God. But see, what if obeying God means, like we said in the last podcast, you not being a first cheerleader? Because see, the first cheerleaders God called, they was already working something. They already had a productivity. And God already increased them as they went. Let's say if God really called you and you started off with nothing, which the Bible don't say God called folk from nothing. Okay, look at Paul. Paul was a Pharisee. Okay, and part of the Sanhedrin. Those guys was wealthy. Okay, I'm just saying, and that's why I have a problem with broke prophets and broke apostles. But even if, let's say you say God started you off with nothing. If God did not increase you,
that part,
if you're still struggling from day to day, you need to reevaluate that. Okay. And listen, ministries go through all kinds of seasons. Okay. All kinds of seasons. Every ministry and every minister will have high and low seasons.
Yes.
Okay. You will have high seasons and low seasons. All right. I'm not discounting that. But if you lose everything in your low season, something's wrong. Something is severely wrong. I'm talking about you now. Because I'm talking about before you become a senior leader. I'm talking about you before the ministry. Okay. I'm just saying, because see, as I read in the Bible, I see where Solomon was to build God's house. But guess what? His house was finished before the temple was finished. What is that saying to us? A lot of y'all want to build God's house, but here it is, God trying to build yours first. See, in Haggai chapter, in the book of Haggai, chapter 1 and even chapter 2, they were being rebuked because their houses were set, but God's house was in ruins.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? But a lot of you're too busy trying to build God's house. You're trying to build the church in your own house.
Mm.
I'm talking about senior leaders. I'm talking about senior leaders. Your house have to be in order before you start trying to build God a house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I try to tell some of these young guys, like, listen, y'all don't have a pot to piss in or when to throw it out of, but you want to be somebody's archbishop. You want to be somebody's chief apostle. And you don't have no revenue.
Mm.
You have no revenue. You're moving from pillar to post. But you somebody's prophet, somebody's apostle. You want to be somebody's spiritual father, and you don't got nothing. What is this? You understand? Get your own self together first. Okay? Get your own self together first. Because, see, and some people may say, well, I'm called to full-time ministry. Before God launched these guys in the full-time ministry, they had businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Matter of fact, the 12 walked away from their businesses to do ministry. But guess what? They had a nice little nest egg to sit on. They had a nice nest egg to sit on. Yes, they did. That's why in Matthew chapter 10, when he sent them out to preach the kingdom, he says, don't bring no gold,
Don't bring your
no
purse.
silver, don't bring no brass or purse for your script or anything like that. He said, don't even bring 2 coats.
Mm.
He said, for the workman is worthy of his meat. In other words, don't bring your own personal wealth into the ministry. That's for you to sit on. I know we don't like that. But let the ministry provide for itself and also provide for you. Because he was teaching them a whole nother level of faith. But they had a nest egg to sit on. Why would Jesus tell them to bring something they didn't have? They had gold, they had silver, they had brass, they had precious metals. Okay? You know, because a lot of them had fishing businesses and stuff like that. Listen, they accumulated wealth through that. And this for all y'all who want your pastors to put up their money every time the ministry has a need. Mm-hmm. You're not in the Bible. The church need $1 million for something, and then you do well. Pastor millionaire, multi-millionaire. Why can't he put up $1 million? Because he ain't supposed to.
Why you can't put up 100? That's your church,
right? For real. You know. So I'm just saying, y'all. You know, we have to become. I'm seeing more and more, especially younger preachers. Millennial preachers and younger. I'm seeing younger preachers set this bad example. Like, how are you somebody's chief apostle and you all in everybody's inbox want money? Mm. You'll be surprised how many apostles been in my inbox over the years. And they're my age and maybe a little bit older, a little bit younger. No. Mm-hmm. No. You're so busy trying to uphold an image in ministry. Mm-hmm. Listen, I've had my up seasons, I've had my down seasons, but I've never had to solicit finances in anybody's inbox. Mm-mm. Ever. All my bills been paid. As long as we've been married, we've never been late on a bill. We've always eaten good. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? So, and I'm not going to let ministry take away from my home. Huh? Mm-mm. I'm concerned, Apostle Jasmine, because
I've literally seen pastors post, well, I'm going to pay the church bills anyway and trust God with my own. That isn't that I don't think God wants you going through that type of wrestling every month.
No. Because you as the leader are supposed to be the chief representative of God to the people. Right? So how does it look when the chief representative can't even pay their bills? I'm talking about before you come into ministry. Now, ministry is supposed to sustain you. I don't care what nobody say. Mm-hmm. And I know we live in different times now. All right. But every church that's ordained of God should be getting to a place where they can put their pastor at least on a small salary.
Mm-hmm.
Because the average pastor works 50 to 70 hours a week. The average pastor. All right. So the Bible says if you preach the gospel, you should live off the gospel. So yeah, you need to sow seed to your leader. But I'm talking to the leaders. The leaders. You need to put something in place to financially secure you while you're doing ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
That's real.
God never called a broke person to ministry, especially not as a first chair leader. He ain't called no broke senior leader. Show me in the Bible. Show me in the Bible where God called a broke senior leader or left them broke. Okay. Show me. And before you talk about Elijah and at the brook and all that other stuff, you understand, God caused him to, or allowed him to have a certain need so that the woman can provide, so that she can live off the overflow of his release and impartation.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't stay like that. He will sustain you in low seasons. But there are guys like my age inboxing a bunch of folk all on social media. Can you help me with this? But you running your mouth on social media. You running your mouth on social media. What is this? What is this? You'll be surprised how many preachers I've had in my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of them that's older. And I'm not trying to condemn nobody. What I'm saying is that before you start trying to be somebody's chief apostle, somebody's spiritual mama, somebody's spiritual daddy, okay, or whatever, you need to have a financial plan for yourself that you're at least attempting to execute. Start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I would add to that, in addition to the financial piece, before you decide to become a senior leader, make sure that you are in a place to where you have that conversation with your spouse, if you're married, for them to be in agreement with what you're doing. Make sure there's a communicated understanding of how things are going to transition, what that's going to mean, or whatever. Because there's a lot of people in ministry who have a spouse, and it can be either men or women, but traditionally, the man is normally the senior leader, and then you have the wife. So traditionally, you see where the wife is either not involved in ministry at all, or a little bit involved, or is bitter or upset somewhere because what they thought it was going to be like versus what it actually is different.
Right.
There was no conversation of, hey, this is what this could look like. This is what this could mean. And there's a lack of understanding. And then it comes up as like it's complaining, but it's like, did you really prepare them for the assignment? Did you prepare them for what this was going to look like? Did you prepare them that this would require 20, 30, 40 hours of your time each week, in addition to your job if you're working one?
Yeah.
Did y'all look at, childcare, all that? There's a lot of marriages that suffer in ministry simply because this conversation is not had prior to. So that's definitely a key to consider.
Yeah.
The other thing that needs to be considered is finding out where your personal goals and values lie. And what I mean by that is we have met some good people, God-fearing, loving people, but they're just bad pastors. Bad pastors meaning incompetent. They can't really teach all that great. They can't, the skills to lead and make decisions are lacking. And in that conversation of further investigation, this person was the deacon or, part of the trustee board. And then whoever the pastor was, when they felt the call to go move somewhere else or a call to go start a business or whatever, they just made that person the pastor. Find out what it is that you will. Make sure you've got all your resolves together so you don't end up starting a church and then jumping ship and then putting somebody like that in place.
Yeah, for real.
because that's a disservice to that person, the congregation, and the body of Christ at large. Because now we've got this church hurt to deal with. Now this person, well, I'm the pastor. They don't know how to be the pastor, and it's embarrassing for them to admit they don't know how to be the pastor while they're the pastor.
Right.
Because you could not be committed to the resolve that God gave you. As soon as you got a bright idea to do something else, you just jump ship.
Right.
We've got to stop having a succession of poorly trained and ill-prepared pastors. But that comes from senior leaders who have not fully decided who they want to be, what they want to be, and they have not put a proper succession plan in place to prepare and train someone else to lead.
Exactly.
What you think about that?
You know, there's a lot of poor succession plans out here. A lot. And a lot of times, a lot of these sons or these successors, they inherit debt.
Mm-hmm.
They inherit debt. They inherit a mess of an administration. You know, all of that, and the son has to normally clean up, not transition the ministry, but clean up the ministry.
Either the son in the spirit, on the faith, or the next pastor they hired.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So we need to think about the kind of legacy that we want to pass.
That's important.
You know, a lot of times we need to think about the kind of legacy we want to pass before we start. Okay, come on now. You again, when your own personal, I ain't saying everything got to be perfect. No. But the Bible says in order to lead a congregation of people or to be an overseer or a senior leader, whatever the case may be, 1 Timothy 3 talks all about natural stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
It didn't talk about how well you can hoop. Okay. It's not about how well you can hoop. It's not about how anointed you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about your ability to wave your hand and slay half the room. It's not about that. Okay, are your underage children in subjection? Okay. Do you govern your house? Is your marriage in order?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Are you the husband of one wife? And of course, it started with men back then because culturally, they wouldn't have been able to take a woman bishop, senior leader, apostle, whatever, right? You know, all that stuff came later. Read your history. So, if you know, back then they had a lot of polygamy, so you had to be the husband of one wife. You had to have one spouse. But then, too, if you've been married 4 and 5 and 6 times, too, that need to be examined too. Not against people who get divorces.
The germs.
Right. I'm not against people who get divorces. Sometimes that happens, you know. But if you've been married 4 and 5 and 6 times, you may not need to be over nobody's congregation.
If you've been married 3 times, 4 times, you are a serial monogamist. I'm not talking about somebody died or something like that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Somebody died or, you know, you was the victim of domestic violence or something like that, you know, or, you know, you married a serial cheater. I understand that.
I'm talking about these people that get married and then divorce. They're the ones that leave. They're the ones that divorce and marry somebody else. Then they divorce them and marry somebody else. They divorce them, marry somebody else. They divorce them, marry somebody else. You have a problem. Yeah. And that's a problem that needs to be resolved before you enter leadership.
Yeah, I read something earlier. There was a well-known prophet that died recently. I didn't even know the man died. Right? But it was probably about a year ago, a year and a half ago. I may not have all the dates and numbers and stories right, but I read some things. And you know, this particular individual, he had left his wife and children, right? And you know, they both founded a church together and everything like that, but the board did not agree because he did not leave for marital he did not leave for biblical reasons. Right? He didn't leave for biblical reasons. Matter of fact, he was the one that was found to be in the wrong. They wasn't specific about what his wrong was, but you could put 2 and 2 together
and make 4.
Yeah, you put 2 together, make 4. So he was the one that was in the wrong, but he was the one that decided to leave. right? And the board didn't agree with it, so they
didn't give him the church, did they?
no, they gave the wife the church. So the wife is the senior leader.
Oh, I know that pissed him off, didn't it?
And he was running around still claiming, as founder of the church at one point, and then they had to release a public statement and all of that other stuff. This was about a year and a half ago or so when a lot of this stuff started happening. And then I found out last month he died.
Wow.
See, you gotta have, and listen, things are not going to be perfect, but you have to have things in order.
That part.
You have to have things in order. If you are married, listen to me. I wish somebody would have given me this advice before we went into ministry when we did. If you are married, make sure your money is in order. Your marriage is in order. If you have kids, make sure your kids are in order. Make sure your personal affairs are in order, because that stuff, make sure your flesh is in order, because that stuff will affect the ministry. That will affect how you minister. And some people's faith in God was based upon their encounter with us. And then when we fall, when we make mistakes, sometimes it affects people's faith. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. People need to be more stronger in the Lord, but that's just how it is. So when it comes to, before becoming a senior leader, man, listen, it's okay to step back and get the bag. Yeah, I said it. It's okay. It's okay to consider getting the bag first. Having something in place, so that way you won't become a beggar to the people.
That's it.
Because senior leaders, especially your apostle or prophet, that's a senior leader, we got to have money. Because if not, the people will turn us into beggars.
That's a whole nother episode.
The people will turn us into beggars. And a lot of you apostles and prophets, you need to take your skills and monetize them. You need to take your knowledge and monetize it. Because these are honored offices, but they're hated offices too. And as soon as you offend people, they're gonna stop giving. So now if you have partners with your ministry, you're blessed. But all of us don't get that privilege. Because a lot of us, we speak too much truth. And unless you're packaged a certain way, people just not gonna give to that. People are fickle. People are just fickle. So you need to consider this before becoming a senior leader. You need to consider this. Because, see, honestly, too, a lot of people don't respect leaders that don't got the bag. And that's just facts.
And then when you get the bag, they accuse you, mishandling the people that be, or prophesying for money to have the bag, or it's ridiculous. Some people would just never be happy, but nonetheless, it's imperative that you get to a place where you have things in order, so you're not to a place of struggling. You're not to a place where you feel like you can or can't say certain things because of how that will affect people. That's not something you really want to deal with. Another thing that I would say definitely to consider before you become a senior leader, and this one's a little bit different, develop a tough skin.
Yeah.
Because, one thing they don't tell people in seminary school and leadership training and ministry training, you have to have a thick skin and be a resilient individual for the kind of rejection you're going to face. And this is not, out of a place of bitterness or anything. This is just a candid reality. Like we were talking about a couple episodes ago. If you can't handle people saying they don't like you, or they don't like what you did, they don't like what you got on, they think you're this or that, this is not for you. People leaving because they don't like what you taught, or they're going somewhere else because they feel like they taught it better, or they like what they wear better, they like the presentation. You've got to be able to deal with stuff like that and still remain in a place of love and a place of focus. And that just comes along with it. People will disagree, not like stuff, want to have a meeting, feel some type of way. A lot of things that you deal with pastorally with people, unfortunately, is very childish. And I know we're talking about adults, but that's a real thing. Well, I feel like, this hurt my feelings, or I don't like the way you said that, or you said it's nicer, or I don't like your view on that scripture, or why would you teach it this way? Well, I just feel like this, and blah, blah, blah. Having to deal with that is exhausting. Whether it's once or twice a month or once or twice a week, it's exhausting. And while that will greatly vary depending upon the mix and the makeup of your congregation, whether you have more babes in the church, whether you have more seasoned people in the church that are getting used to you as a younger leader, whether you're a little bit more charismatic and they're a little more reserved, how that actually looks will vary. But nonetheless, it is something you have to be able to deal with and not take it personal and still love the people unconditionally.
Yeah. You got to have a thick skin because people will talk about, they will criticize every move you make, and you have the best intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And spread their criticism to others, and then smile in your face like nothing happened.
Yeah. And then guess what? You got to knowing that they talking, you still got to love those people.
Exactly.
You still got to minister to them. You still have to. I think one of the hardest things for me that I had to get past was prophesying to people that I know didn't like me. Now I did it at first. But when I started encountering that thing more, I wanted to just tell folk about themselves openly, real quick. And the Lord was just like, "No, you can't do that. You still have to give them the word of the Lord." And I had to give people good prophecies that was doing me wrong. You understand what I'm saying? But and then there was an appointed time for us to address, whatever issue that was at hand.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? So leadership is also character building. You can't haul off and slap folk. You can't just haul off and punch folk. All right.
Mm-mm.
Now if they hit you is a different story. Even though people will expect you to turn the other cheek, they'll talk about you for turning the other cheek, and then they'll talk about you if you don't turn the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying, "Damned if you do and damned if you don't." You understand what I'm saying? So you got to have that tough skin because your life will be under a microscope for real, and you can have the best intentions, and people will always
find a problem.
And then a lot of times people don't find no problem until they get offended. They don't have a problem at first, and then when they get offended, all of a sudden
they go look for a problem.
All of a sudden, it's a problem. You understand? Because somebody say "story of my life." So before you become a senior leader, you got to have your soul together. So well, at least part of your soul that's going to affect your leadership. All right, because we all are a work in progress, right? And a lot of times, ministry can wound your soul. You need some kind of, you need a break, take a vacation. Anyway, that's different. But I would say this. Make sure you're whole enough to lead.
That's good.
I would say that, whole enough to lead, and make sure your bag is right, man. Make sure your finances is right. Make sure you can be self-sustained at least. You understand? Make sure that, y'all. Make sure your household is in order. All right, your kids, your spouse, and all of that kind of stuff, because all the things that I just mentioned will affect you in ministry. I promise you it will.
Absolutely. You got any closing remarks, or that's it?
Before you become a leader, make sure you can lead your own life.
That's good.
Your home is practice. Your family is practice if you have one. If you're single, your personal life is practice. So I would say work on self first. Take time for you. Make sure you're whole as a person. Make sure you're knowledgeable as a person. Make sure you know not just the Bible, but how the Bible is applicable to life. That means you have to live it a little bit first before you become a senior leader. So yeah, no 16-year-old archbishops and chief apostles.
Lord. Well, listen, thank you for joining us on the F3 podcast. I hope that this was a blessing for you. Tell us down in the comments, how you're feeling. What are some things you wish you knew before stepping into senior leadership? And
Yeah, for
if
real.
you have not made that step yet, what are some of your concerns or fears about the idea of stepping into senior leadership? So let us know what you think. Follow us over on IG at King in Queen Blair. Until next time on the F3 podcast. Goodbye.
All right.